So we should be recording now. We have some people who are going to help you out. If you do have questions in the chat, but we will open things up at the end after we've gotten a lot of your questions that you submitted already online. So we can answer some of those. And then if you have additional questions at the end, we will go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see my presentation there. Yes? Thumbs up if you can see it. Cool. All right. So this is Ask an Archaeologist, which is a presentation for our first LEGO League Friends. This is presented by the Maryland Council for Social Studies. And we have some wonderful archaeologists here from the Maryland Historical Trust and from Howard County Recreation and Parks. So that's who we all are. My name is Julia Berg. I'm an instructional coach in Wicomico County. I taught sixth grade history for 12 years. And we also have Sarah Mason here. She's an eighth grade history teacher from Wicomico County. And she and I actually have our own company that helps to bring archaeologists and teachers together and do more archaeology in classrooms, which is pretty awesome. Our two professional archaeologists, we are not professional archaeologists, but we do have some professional archaeologists that are with us this evening. We have research archaeologist with the Maryland Historical Trust, Stephanie Soder, and we have an archaeologist and program coordinator with Howard County Department of Rec and Parks, Kelly Palick. And we also have Angie de Guzman here, who is a member of the Maryland Council for Social Studies and also a First LEGO League advisor, coach, team leader, right? Cool. So that's us. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get into the good stuff. So archaeology is the study of human activity passed through material culture that has been left behind. And when I say material culture, what I mean is the stuff, people's stuff that they have left behind. So mostly that's like the leftovers of people's lives, the trash and anything else that they have left behind that's evidence that they were there. So archaeologists study artifacts and features to learn humans in the past. That is what archaeologists are focused on. And archaeology provides us with primary source evidence of events that happened in the past and people who lived there. These are some examples of artifacts. Over on the left, we've got a projectile point. It would have been like the top of a spear. In the middle, we've got a pair of scissors. And over on the right, we've got a whole variety of artifacts from ceramics to oyster shell to nails to teeth. So those are all different types of artifacts that show evidence that people were living in a particular. Here's some more artifacts. On the left, we've got a projectile point that would have been used for a hunting tool. And on the right, this is a stone that was being turned into a hunting tool. So it was not finished, but it was being worked into a tool. So I mentioned that archaeologists study artifacts, but they also study features, right? The artifacts are the objects. Features are things that you can't pull out of the ground. They are areas of human activity that you can't remove from the ground where they are. So things like cellars or trash pits or post holes. These are things that leave stains or different discoloration in the soil that show that there's evidence that people were there and people were doing things, but we can't pick that up and take it with us. We can't pick that up and put it in a museum. And so that's something that's really exciting for archaeologists to look at are the features. And you can see those from this aerial view here of an archaeology site. The darker colored soil that you see there, those are the features. This is super important, right? A lot of people have this misconception that archaeologists play with dinosaurs. And that is not a thing. Archaeologists are not interested in dinosaurs. They might be interested in them, but not professionally. But if an archaeologist finds a dinosaur bone, they're going to call up a paleontologist and say, "Hey, this is your thing." Paleontologists are the ones who study dinosaurs. Archaeologists are interested in humans, and humans and dinosaurs did not live at the same time. So lots and lots of very far apart. Um, there's also anthropologists. Oftentimes, when you are studying to become an archaeologist, you would take classes in anthropology, or you would be an anthropology major. Anthropologists are closely associated with archaeology, and they study culture, society, biology, and human ancestors, like Neanderthals or other hominids. A lot of times they're focused on bone structure and skeletal structure of different types of hominids. It's really important for us to remember that archaeology is not just about the artifacts. The artifacts are really cool and it's fun when we pull this up out of the soil. Um, but these sites and these objects help to tell stories about people in the past who are the ancestors of people who are alive today, that there are humans behind each artifacts. We definitely don't call artifacts relics or treasure. That's kind of cringe. We don't do that. And it's important for us to keep in mind the descendant communities, such as Native American tribal nations, who are connected to the people who actually lived on these sites at a time in history. The oral histories and the memories and the knowledge of these descendant community members is really important for helping us learn about the past. And archaeologists collaborate a lot with descendant communities because these are the people that they're studying are their ancestors. And you have a picture there of members of the Pocomoke Indian Nation, and their ancestors lived on the Delmarva Peninsula for thousands of years before Europeans arrived, and they're still here, right? They're still members of our community. They still live on the land here. They still have tons of knowledge of their culture that existed here for thousands of years. So when we dig up artifacts, those artifacts belong to their ancestors, and we want to make sure that we keep that in mind. Um, so why is archaeology so important? Um, Archaeology is how we know what we know about the past. It's how we get the information to write the history books. And if archaeological sites are damaged, or if artifacts are collected without a professional, it's like ripping pages out of that history book. Our story can't be complete without that information. It doesn't make sense. And if you think about your favorite story or your favorite book that you read, how would you feel if, someone had gone through and ripped out like every 10th page? You would be missing pieces of the story. You could lose entire characters from the narrative. And so it's really, really important to make sure that those archaeological sites are preserved and protected, so that we can get as much of a complete picture of history as possible. So some of you asked danger to archaeology sites. Archaeological sites can be by a bunch of different things. Weather and erosion is a big thing. The waterways have changed over time. The Chesapeake Bay looks way different now than it did when it was, 10,000 years ago, when it was just a little baby river. The courses of rivers have changed, the coastlines have changed, and so erosion is a big problem. Agriculture. Farming is a big problem. So, when we have these things in the soil and the tractors plow it all up and mix everything around, that can not only damage artifacts, but it can mix things around. So it can confuse the time periods, which we'll see in a minute when we talk about how things are organized in the soil. And then also like looting, which is just a sad thing that sometimes people like to go and dig stuff up on their own without a professional, because they want to keep it in a box under their bed. And when people do that, it means that we're not able to learn information from that artifact, and we're not able to learn more about the story of the past. So those are some ways that archaeological sites can get damaged, and it's really important to preserve them. Archaeologists only get one chance, which is kind of, that's a lot of pressure, because archaeology is a destructive science. So as we uncover the evidence, archaeologists are actually destroying the site. It's never You can never put things back in the ground the same way that they were when you pull them out for the first time. It's kind of like having a book that you can only read once, or a witness to something that you can only interview one time. If you don't document everything correctly the first time, it is gone forever. You can never put it back the way that it was before. So it's really, really important for archaeologists to document everything as much as possible, as completely as possible. Everything from taking pictures to drawing exact maps of what it looks like when they dig things up, to making sure everything gets into correctly labeled bags. Everything is really, really important. To even writing down the exact color of the soil, in that particular hole that they were digging. You really have to document everything, every little piece of everything, just so that we know exactly what it looked like, because we'll never be able to look at it the same way again. Um, I found this graphic on the Crow Canyon Archaeological Center website, so anybody can go and look this up. It's on the internet. But that's why the archaeological process is so important, right? Because we only get one chance. And so the process of archaeology is very scientific. It starts out with research questions, just like you would start off with a hypothesis in science. You have to design your experiment or your research. You've got to get the correct permits to be able to dig. Archaeologists don't get to just go dig wherever they want. They have to ask permission first. And then you do your field work and and then you analyze all of your data and figure out what it's telling you. And then you finally get to publish your work. And then the artifacts go somewhere like a museum where they can be kept safe, forever. So no, archaeologists do not get to keep the artifacts. I know that's a common question, right? The artifacts belong to everybody, and archaeologists make these discoveries for the public. They do this for all of us, not for themselves. They're not out here trying to make millions of dollars by finding treasure. Um, the artifacts are used to provide insight into our shared past, and they are available for anyone to study. So artifacts that might have been excavated 20 or 30 or 50 years ago, they are stored safely so that an archaeology student in college today could go and request to see that artifact and study it and make new discoveries, because we have new technology that's developing all the time. And so we can always discover new things about those artifacts. So how do we know where to dig, right? We don't just go out and pick, it's not like, just throwing darts or pin the tail on the donkey and making guesses. We have methods to help figure out where to dig. Everything from historical research, right? Going and looking at archive documents and seeing what people wrote from a long time ago, what kind of clues that can tell us, to walking and doing surveys of the surface, walking around on the land and seeing if you see artifacts on the surface of the ground, to all kinds of remote sensing equipment, from ground penetrating radar to magnetometry surveys and all kinds of like fancy equipment that can tell us when there is stuff going on under the ground that we might not be able to see. Kind of like taking an X-ray. Right? If you break your arm, the doctors don't have to cut your arm open to look at the bone and see that it's broken. They can take an X-ray, and so we can do the same thing with the ground. We can shoot lasers down into the ground, and that will give us information, and we can see if there's something weird going on down there. Um, And then we do tests, right? We can dig little tiny test holes to see if there's anything cool going on down there. And then the public, right? Sometimes people, right, just ordinary regular people will find artifacts and bring it to the attention of professional archaeologists. And that's where the public can be really helpful in letting professionals know if there is a site that we didn't know about. This is one method of remote sensing. This is GPR, ground penetrating radar. So it looks kind of like a little lawnmower that you push back and forth, and it shoots little laser beams down into the soil. And the laser beams can tell us when there is weird stuff, anomalies, things that are different than they should be going on down in the soil. And that is often a good clue that there was disturbance there and that there were maybe people doing things. Um, so this is what a dig site looks like, right? You might see people screening for artifacts, yeah, as they come out of those units. And you would put the buckets of soil into these screens and shake them, and then the artifacts would remain in the screen while the dirt falls below, kind of like sifting sand at the beach. Archaeologists dig in square called units, and those buckets of dirt are removed using shovels, and the soil is screened for artifacts. Trowels are used for more delicate work, and you can see an overhead drone shot here, as well as another picture of people working in that unit. Here's another photo of the dig site. After all of those artifacts are removed from the soil, we're not done with them, right? We have to go and process them in a lab. And that involves organizing and categorizing and cataloging and cleaning and all of that fun stuff. So each artifact is cleaned. They're sorted into different, types, and cataloged in a list so that we know exactly how many pieces of pottery and how many stone tools and how many pieces of glass and how many animal bones we might have. And everything has to be kept with the artifacts that were nearby in the same unit. It's really important that we keep things together that were found together. Someone asked the question how we date artifacts. There are some really big words here, so bear with me. There are a number of ways that we can tell how old artifacts are. One way is dendrochronology. So that's when we use tree rings to tell how old something is. This is really useful with like houses and wooden beams because they're made from trees, and we can count the tree rings and see how old they are. Radiocarbon dating is really common. That's where we measure the amount of carbon-14 in an organism, and scientists can estimate how long ago that living thing died. There is stratigraphic dating, which basically means older stuff is buried deeper down than younger stuff. The newer stuff is closer to the surface, and the older stuff is deeper down. And then there is artifact seriation. Basically, that means we use known date ranges of artifacts like pottery. Pottery is really easy for us to know exactly when that type of pottery was popular, when it was being made. And if we find something else that's nearby, that's found with that, we know about how old that artifact is. And that's what I mean when I say stratigraphy. Stratigraphy just describes the different layers of the soil. So older things are buried deeper than younger things. So up near the surface, you're going to see more modern stuff like an aluminum can or a plastic comb or like a Coke can tab. And the deeper that you go, if the soil has not been disturbed, the deeper you go is going to be the older stuff. This is what it looks like in real life. Most soils are not this pretty, but this is a really clear picture showing the different layers of the soil that has not been disturbed. So context is a really important word in archaeology. Context means that where an object is found and what else is found nearby can give you information about what that object was used for. So where it is can help you understand what it is and what it was used for. Sort of the way that you might use context clues when you're reading. Context clues can help you figure out the meaning of an unfamiliar word, right? So this strategy means that you would look at the nearby words in the same sentence or in the same paragraph to see if they can give you hints about this word that you don't quite know what it means. Sometimes they give you the definition of the word, or they'll give you an opposite word in that sentence or in that paragraph. And so the context can give you that clue about what that word means. Archaeologists kind of do the same thing with artifacts. They look at the objects that are found nearby, and that helps them make guesses about unfamiliar artifacts or objects that they're not really sure what they are. They can make guesses about them. So for example, right, if you just find some fish bones, you find a fish skeleton, that's by itself, that might not tell you very much. But if you find a fish skeleton next to a circle of rocks that was used as a cooking hearth, and as well as some pottery, that's going to tell you a lot more about what was going on in that area. You know that there were humans that caught that fish and were eating it. Someone asked the question about what kinds of robots we might use. And so I wanted to show you some videos of a really cool machine called the Paleo Digger, which can be used to, and this guy has videos on YouTube. So if you want to look this up on YouTube, there are much longer documentaries that are pretty great. But this is a machine that can dig really, really, really deep holes that can get down to stuff that's like 10 or 13,000 years old. So hopefully this will work. This is part of it here, and you can see the drill, the auger is going really deep down into the soil. And here's another one, just so that you can kind of get an idea of how that machine works. Again, he's got lots of videos of this, including like a full documentary on YouTube that's available. Archaeology X is the name of his company. So archaeology and then just the letter X is the name of his company. Some trusted resources. So it's really important for us to make sure that if you are going and doing your own research, that you get accurate information. So these are some trusted resources: the Society for American Archaeology, the Maryland Historical Trust, Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum, Archaeology in the Community, the Florida Public Archaeology Network, Crow Canyon Archaeological Center, the Archaeological Conservancy, the Archaeological Institute of America, and the National Park Service are all really great resources. These are not the only ones that are good, but these are ones that are particularly wonderful and have very accurate and trustworthy information. And we also got some questions about local programs and contacts. So if you fall in love with archaeology like I did, you might want to get involved. And so Jefferson Patterson Park is amazing. They have an incredible museum. They do field trips for schools and homeschools. They have a whole day dedicated to discovering archaeology. That's a big family event with all kinds of cool activities. They also do archaeology summer camp camps. They are totally amazing if you want to get like a real hands-on archaeology experience. You can join your local chapter of the Archaeological Society of Maryland. There are a number of chapters around the state. Um, for teachers, if we have any teachers on the call, Sarah and our company Digging Deeper offers a 1 week summer teacher workshop called From Trowels to Teaching. We offered that in June of this past year, and we hope to offer it in next June as well. So keep an eye out for that. County parks and recreation departments often have archaeology days and activities, and I'll let Kelly talk a little bit more about that if she wants to in a moment. But I know a number of counties around Maryland have cool archaeology activities. Archaeology in the Community is a DC-based company. They're a nonprofit, and they have tons of kid-friendly activities and different events. The Baltimore Community Archaeology Lab is at Towson University, and it's a public archaeology lab. So if you're interested in doing and getting involved with lab work and things like that, that's a great resource. And the Maryland Historical Trust is awesome for if you want information, the public information platforms, if you want to do public lab and fieldwork opportunities, or if you find an artifact and you need to report it. They have an app called the MD Find app where you can take a picture of that artifact and it'll send it to the professional archaeologists. So that is pretty much the overview of archaeology. So now I think we get to the fun part where we get to hear from our friends, the archaeologists. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And then we can start talking to our wonderful professional friends.
We have a question in the chat. I don't know if we're taking questions yet. There's one that says, "What if a small artifact falls through a sifter?" And I thought it might be a good chance to bring up the concept of water screening because we could use help with water screening.
And water screening is so when you are excavating in features, you take samples of the soil for that very reason, looking for small items, seeds, anything that could fall through that. And then when you water screen, you actually screen it through a smaller size screen, and that collects the smaller artifacts. Should we introduce ourselves?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So my name is Kelly Palick, and I am the parks archaeologist with Howard County Recreation and Parks. And I run a public archaeology program through the park system called Archaeology in the Parks. And I offer, we do K through 12 programming. I work with homeschoolers. I work with scout groups. And we do offer summer camps through Howard County Rec and Parks. So thank you all for joining us this evening.
And I'm Steph Soder. I'm the research archaeologist with the Maryland Historical Trust. We are the State Historic Preservation Office. So, like Julia said, we have a lot of public information available through some of our platforms called Medusa, both architectural and archaeological resources. And I work for the Office of Research, Survey, and Registration, which means that we get to go out and actually do the research side. There is another office within the Maryland Historical Trust that works on archaeology that has to be done because of laws that are enacted. Like if development is occurring, then they have to do it. We don't do that, but we do the more research side. So if you guys find any artifacts, you can always report them to us. We would love to find out some more sites around Maryland from y'all.
Cool. Okay, so let's get into some of these questions. What are some of the biggest challenges faced by archaeologists? I know this is a burning question for our LEGO League friends.
Um, I can say one big challenge that we're facing right now, working for a county government is funding. Um, Money is very short and staffing is an issue. So I rely heavily on volunteers and the public to help out. Um, So I'd say that's my biggest challenge right now is funding.
Yeah, I definitely echo that on the state side. We obviously do get a little more funding because we got State Historic Preservation Office, but we do want to try to trickle that down to our county folks and try to help them out. But absolutely, because you don't always get funded with what you need to maintain some things. So you have to get creative. If there are cost-effective ways of doing some survey, like using volunteers or different new technologies, that's always super helpful. I would also say one of the challenges, I think, overall for archaeology, aside from the funding part, is really um, trying to get people to understand that archaeology sites are there because there aren't visual cues like there are with architectural resources where you have buildings and you have for graves you have gravestones and things like that, but you don't always know that an archaeological site is there. And some people think that this area's been built up, there's a city there, there's no sites there, but that's not correct either. There's urban sites. Some of them are capped by industry and things like that. So that's definitely one of the big challenges is getting people to understand that there are archaeology sites there, and to basically anything that you do, landscaping, building roads, things like that, it can impact them.
I think another issue is security as well. Especially with me, I'm working on public parkland. And, when we do public archaeology, we are inviting the public in to these sites that are open to the public. And it's, trying to think of different ways to protect these sites from looters. Um, so there are laws in the county that we have in rec and parks, particularly with metal detecting. Um, you're not allowed to metal detect unless if it's with me or a professional archaeologist. And then just protecting the location of the sites and
Hmm.
setting up cameras and fencing in sites and
Yeah, thank you for that. Um, Going off of that one, is climate change a challenge to archaeology, like specifically in Maryland? Do we see issues from that?
Oh yeah. Um, there's hundreds, if not thousands of miles of shoreline in Maryland, and throughout time, people have been settling near water sources. That's just how, that's a part of living is getting fresh water and getting resources from other types of water as well. So those sites are now eroding away. There's rising water that is coming in and cresting over. So absolutely, climate change is definitely impacting in Maryland.
and I work away from the water, so we don't see it as much, but I mean, just with the changing weather is a challenge as well. So with severe weather, it's a challenge to work out in the field. This summer was very hot.
Yeah. Um, what about creating maps of research sites? Are there challenges with that? And what tools are available and what are the costs associated with those tools?
When I started out in archaeology over 20 years ago, there wasn't as much technology as there is today. I use a software system called QGIS, which is actually a um, free resource for archaeologists to use. It's a version of ArcGIS. Um, and I'll let Steph talk with what they use.
Yeah, so you of course can do it by hand and things like that, but we often use high precision GPS system,
Yeah.
and which is great because you can get like sub-centimeter accuracy on a beautiful sunny day with no clouds. However, rarely does that occur. So but it can still give you like 2 to 10 centimeters of accuracy, which is really great. That's way better than, the old way of doing it most times. We also use a total station, which is a land survey tool. The problem with that, and you can use that under trees, which is great when you're in a treed area, but that is line of sight most of the time. So you have to be able to see the equipment has to be able to see each other. So if there's a lot of trees in the way, you're doing it in the woods, you have to set up a lot of different stations and move around, and it can get very challenging. Um, as for cost, A good GPS can be a couple hundred to $1,000, and that can get you 10 centimeter accuracy. Our phones now, I've had pretty good luck, at least kind of getting close to where I need to be, maybe like 2 or 3 meters, or 5 to 10 feet. Um, but yeah, the higher precision GPSs are probably a couple thousand, so it is costly. It's the pen and paper way is cost effective, but you won't get your accuracy as well.
It's a lot of time.
Yes, yes, it
So
is.
it's the technology
Yeah.
saves you time, but it's not always the most accurate.
Yeah.
And it's fun to map sites. I really enjoy it.
Cool. How do you transport all of your equipment? And is it a challenge sometimes to get all that stuff out into the field and drag it all out there and back?
When
Yeah.
I started out in the field, I worked in what's called contract archaeology. So we would travel to different sites and we would have to use our personal vehicles to lug equipment around. I only recently got a truck through the county, so I don't have to trash up my car anymore. And I have, since we stay at one site for a long period of time, we store all of our equipment there. Our ground penetrating radar machine we actually store in our office. So it's nice to have a big truck with a lot of space.
Yeah, we have a storage room in our office with all of our gear there, and but our office is pretty big and it's in the basement, so we have to move everything manually out of that room into we have a van. It's probably a 20-year-old van now, and it's angry, it's clunky. It's falling apart a little, but and so sometimes we don't need all of our equipment though. So that's why it's kind of nice to be able to store it in a room, and then whatever we're going out, if we're doing GPR, we'll take our GPR out. If we're doing excavations, we'll take all the screens and the shovels and everything. But we can kind of pick and choose what we have. But man, like some sort of just all purpose van where everything stayed in perfectly, that'd be amazing.
Awesome. So do you face misunderstandings about your job a lot? Do you get people who don't really know what you do and think that you are Indiana Jones? And how does that create a challenge for you?
I work with kids like almost every day, and I'm actually impressed with the amount of knowledge that kids have. When I started out, it was, oh, you're like Indiana Jones. But now most kids know, and adults know what we do. The biggest question, though, and misunderstanding is whether or not we keep the artifacts that we find.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
get that question every time somebody comes out to the site. So I have to explain to them why we don't keep the artifacts and what happens to the artifacts.
Yeah, and similarly, we get a lot of misunderstandings, especially working for the state. I don't know if you see this too, Kelly, but people are afraid to tell us about their fines because we will come in and we will take their land.
Yeah.
That is not the case. We will not do that. We can't do that. There's no legal way to do that. There's no monetary value that we could give you for that. So that's why we really want to encourage people to report these fines to us. Or they think that they're going to get in trouble because, maybe they were in a state park where you're not supposed to pick up artifacts, but maybe they did, and they're like hesitate to tell us. But we're not here to get you in trouble. We want you guys to report these things so that we can come out, and maybe there's a really great site there that we just don't know about. So that's definitely one of the misunderstandings that we have to deal with quite often.
I had this past spring, I had an email, um, or a phone call and an email from somebody who was in one of our parks and was walking along and found a really beautiful Levana projectile point. And she emailed me panicking because they took it. And she's like, I Googled and I found your name and I just want to let you know we have it. So she actually handed it over and gave us the coordinates where they found it. So it's,
Yeah.
most people are very good about telling you what they find and where. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like kind of going with that metal detectors, have been pretty good about actually telling us now too about their finds too. And there's been this long-standing kind of misunderstanding between metal detectors and archaeologists. And nowadays we're getting a lot better and we are working together, which is really
Yeah.
great. So,
Yeah.
we try to cultivate that, and outreach really does help with that.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you. How is GPR advancing or being used in your profession? Also, same thing for like 3D printing. And has 3D printing changed the way that you work and study?
Sure. I've never done 3D printing, but I do GPR. It saves time. It
Yeah.
helps us if we have a big area that we have to cover and we know specifically, and if we have a short amount of time, it helps us pinpoint exactly what area to focus on. Um, we still have to ground truth that data, but it helps shrink the time. It helps us, it prevents us from digging holes across the whole site so we can actually focus on one area where we know we would find something.
Yeah, absolutely. We do GPR probably once a month, if not more, especially in the winter. Winter's a great time to do it. But a great example of what Kelly was just talking about, our field session that we host with the Archaeological Society of Maryland every year, in May and June. This past year, we were at a site called Teagues Point, and Julia has been there. It's in the middle of a huge agricultural field. And the way we found it was that somebody was collecting there for years before the state owned it. And he brought the artifacts to us and said, "Hey, these all looked like, late 17th century artifacts. And I can tell you exactly where I found them from." And he took us out to the field and he's like, "Right along this ridge is where I found it." And we did four 30-meter by 30-meter units with the GPR out of that whole field. And we got right on that feature. And this past year, we did 11 days of excavation, and it was just chock full of features and artifacts, all late 17th, early 18th century stuff. So it's going to be, hopefully, we'll be back there, and it's going to be a really cool site. So if you guys want to come out and do archaeology, put it in your calendars for late May, early June.
Someone asked in the chat, how deep does GPR scan?
It
Ours,
depends. Oh,
oh, no, go ahead.
it depends on which frequency you use, and I think Steph, what frequency do you guys use?
Uh, oh
Well, we
gosh.
use 450
I
megahertz.
think ours is less. I'm
I
just
think you
blanking
guys
on
use 300.
I just want to say 3 or 350. I think
Yeah.
350 is ringing in my brain.
I think we
Um,
can go down to about, oh gosh, I forget what our machine is.
Ours is set for 3 meters, but in
Yeah.
reality, it mostly gets like to 1.5. So maybe between 6 to 8 feet deep.
Yeah. Ours, I think, can go down to like 8 meters, I want to say, but we set it to 3 meters just because there's
Yeah.
generally
Generally,
bedrock pretty
nothing's going to be
low.
below that
Yeah.
archaeologically, unless you're in a very specific place and site.
And you can
Um,
see on the scan, you can see where bedrock is. In Howard County, you hit bedrock very fast because
mhm.
we're in the Piedmont. And so it's usually past like a meter and a half, 2 meters.
Yeah. And then regarding on to the 3D printing question that I forgot to address, but so we don't use 3D printing a whole lot, but we do use it a little bit. It's a great outreach tool. So we are very lucky that we have collections that we can take out to the public, but not everybody has that. And actually at a conference I went to recently, I was able to pick these up, but someone has created 3D models of artifacts and they are free online. Oops, my camera's not picking that up. Oh, it doesn't like my frozen Charlotte. Um, but anybody can download these files and make them. And so that's really great so that teachers can do this, students can do this, museums can do it. So you can touch it, you can, manipulate it. We're not afraid of it being broken. And diverse. So like this one, and it keeps blurring it. So I'm sorry. It's supposed to be a little cat, but this is a Middle Eastern artifact. So like we wouldn't find this over here. So it's cool to be able to show a diversity in artifacts with the 3D printer, which is very cool. Somebody asked what the website is for that. Offhand, I'm not sure, but I will get it in the chat in about a second.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, How do you know if there's anything dangerous in the at a dig site? And has anything dangerous ever happened to you doing archaeology?
So before you go out, before you actually excavate, you actually go out and observe the site to look for any of those dangers. You look at aerial photographs. Um, I know one thing that happened to me. I was working in Prince George's County like 20 years ago, and we were a lot of times when you're doing survey work, you're working through wooded areas that aren't cleared, and I almost stepped on a rattlesnake. I'd heard the little hiss and the rattle, and I just booked it. But I would say the biggest dangers are, um, wildlife, and then, but usually they stay away from you when they hear you. And then, like if you're working at, near construction sites, that's probably something where you have to be a little more careful, where you have to wear hard hats. If you're working in an area, I know right now is hunting season, and if you're working out in a field, you wear your safety vests. I know that's another hazard.
Mhm. Yeah, I was gonna say definitely for Maryland specific, yeah, definitely the copperheads, we've had them on site before too. Ticks, those are delayed effects, but they are effects. And non-Maryland related, I got my start in underwater archaeology, and my interests are in conflict archaeology. So on battlefields and things like that, you need to be very careful about UXO or unexploded ordnances and things like that. And I actually saw somebody ask the question about what would you do if you found a bomb or other dangerous things? We did find one. We found a 100-pound bomb underwater underneath of an engine block of an airplane. And so we did have to call the government and tell them that that was there. And they were like, okay, don't go near it. We'll take care of it. And I don't know if they did take care of it because we were not involved at that point. But yeah, it can happen. And just working underwater in itself um, can be dangerous, as a sport. Recreational diving can be very safe, especially if you're trained. However, archaeology, sometimes you are not able to see anything. So you're doing everything by hand, without being able to see. So you have to get trained up for that so you don't panic underwater. But of course, that kind of stuff, can happen. So be as trained as you can, go out to the field and look at what you're going into before you do your background research, making sure you know the wildlife. Those are the kind of ways you can at least mitigate, hopefully, that you won't be in danger. But
And I think another safety issue is somebody asked this question about the depth of our holes that we excavate.
mm,
Um, in Howard County, some of our holes are actually can get very deep. So we only excavate up to a certain point before we stop, just because there is the risk of the walls caving in on you. Um, we often shore up walls. We kind of um, terrace the units so that there is a way that we can get out. But there is a depth that we stop working just for safety.
Cool. I got poison ivy once on an archaeology dig, and it
Yeah.
was it was not fun. I was wearing gloves, but I touched poison ivy with my glove and didn't realize it. And then it was really hot outside, and I was sweating, and I went like this,
Mhm.
my glove, and I got a big streak of poison ivy right across my forehead, and I looked really dumb for a couple weeks. So, so that was fun. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about like the education path to become an archaeologist, or like what you need to study and what you need to do to become an archaeologist?
Sure. So I have both I have my bachelor's degree in anthropology. When you study it as an undergraduate, they don't have that many programs specifically in archaeology. You have to actually focus on anthropology because they want you to get a good variety to really understand each subfield. And then when you're in graduate school, so that took me 4 years. And then when you go to graduate school, you can focus more on whatever specific thing you want to learn about. So I have my master's degree in public anthropology because I'm interested in working with the public and doing community archaeology. So that took about 5 years because I was working full time. Oh, Steph, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. I was like trying to find which one. I'm still trying to find the 3D printing stuff. I know it's through, I believe it's called the Virtual Curation Laboratory for Virginia. I'm just trying to Google it and I can't seem to find the website I have of them. Um, I did not take the normal route for education. I did my bachelor's in criminal justice, so I didn't do that. I didn't do that right. But I did do an anthropology minor and ended up falling in love with it. I went through a few years of being a security guard and then decided I didn't like that anymore. And so I did a field school. So I kind of switched it around. I did the field school first to, make sure that this is what I wanted to do. Loved that. So then I did another field school, applied for graduate school and for maritime studies, which is underwater archaeology at East Carolina University. So um that was my route. And you can just do, if you just get a bachelor's in archaeology, you can just stop there. You don't need a master's. You'll likely just be doing tech work. Both Kelly and I have done the cultural resource management side of things. It's a lot of travel up and down. The wherever you are and moving to hotel. You can get your master's degree and you can go further and get your PhD. My colleagues both have their PhDs, but right now I have no thoughts about doing that. So I'm comfortably in the master's area, so
Mostly you get your PhD if you want to teach at the university level.
yeah.
Cool. Okay. They do not work together. But I mean, sometimes I guess there was a question in the chat if you two worked
Oh,
together.
yeah.
So
We
so
try to support our county archaeologists as best as we can. So
Yeah.
we have overlapped with Kelly.
Yep.
yeah. But they don't actually work in the same building and not
Mm.
usually on the same projects. But unless it's something like this, but archaeologists do try to support each other's work and help each other out. And because we all really want the same, archaeologists all really want the same thing, which is to protect the cultural resources that we have and to help everyone get a better understanding of the past. And so that's a goal that all of the archaeologists have. Yes, the physical labor can be a challenge and can be tiring. Lots of digging and lots of lifting buckets, and it does you get muscles from it. So, have any of you guys found a dino before?
Nope.
No,
I know they have the dinosaur park in Prince George's County in Laurel,
they do.
Yeah.
but I have not found a dinosaur bone.
Yep.
I know somebody asked a question about human remains, and I think this is an important question to address.
Mhm.
Um, if we are working on a site and we uncover human remains, we actually have to stop and call the police because we don't know if it's a modern crime scene or if it's an older like burial ground.
Yeah.
So that is actually, a challenge that we face in the field. I've never randomly come across human remains, but we
Yeah,
have to
not
handle the sites
randomly.
with respect and
Hmm. Yeah, it's never been
Mhm.
randomly, thankfully. But
yeah. And if we do have um, come across human remains in our collection, we have to um, deal with if they're found on specific types of property, we have to actually follow federal laws through the Native American Graves and Repatriation Act. Um, so,
yeah, same, we do as well.
yep.
Yeah. I
Yep.
also did see a question about using a drone,
Mhm.
and we do. I am actually the right now the drone operator for MHT Archaeology. I got my commercial license a couple months ago, and right now we use it to take very cool pictures of the sites and the volunteers and things like that. We are currently working to hook it up to our GPS system so that we can kind of explore larger areas faster. And and then be able to pinpoint that area exactly where it is. And we do use it for photogrammetry. So at the field session, especially, I took images of all of the units from different angles, and we can stitch them together and make a model that we can manipulate. And it's much more realistic than like a photograph and easier. So um,
Cool. Yeah, archaeologists don't actually want to find human remains.
Mm-mm.
That's a really bad day for an archaeologist. They don't want to do that. Even if it is somebody from thousands of years ago, they don't want to find that. We want to leave those people where they are and let them be. And so that is not a that
We
is not
work,
a thing.
yeah, we work in cemeteries, but we work on documenting where burials are. We do not
Mhm.
excavate.
yeah.
We've had a few questions about preserving artifacts, ways that you can preserve artifacts, challenges to preserving artifacts, how to repair artifacts if they break, or how big of a deal it is when they break.
Honestly, it's not a huge deal if they break. Yeah. It's uh, something that I hammered into my brain, especially through grad school, is it's not about how nice the artifact looks, it's what the information is that it can give you. And that doesn't really matter if it's broken in half. Of course, we want it to be, we want it to be careful and having the whole artifact is helpful when you're trying to identify it or, you're looking at the typology of it, especially with like pre-contact Native American points and things like that, projectile points. You want the whole thing to be able to see this is what this looks like, this is how it's changed through time. However, if already have it out of the ground and then you accidentally drop it and it breaks in half, it's not the end of the world.
It's happened to all of us.
Yeah, it really has. I've accidentally, because one way to identify ceramics is to touch it to your tongue. I've had it stick to my tongue and then choke on it and spit it on the ground. So it happens. But yeah, we also do use glue, to put things back together, to see how we can fit things together. Um, Preserving, we do use chemicals, but I am not well versed in that because that takes a very specific knowledge to do. The people down at Jefferson Patterson Park at the Maryland Archaeological Conservation Lab are the ones that do that in the state, and they would be really good at answering those kinds of questions for you guys if you have
It's a
them.
specific study
Yes.
where with that you go through, and it's a lot of science. So I know with our lab, we curate as best as we can according to the state standards and guidelines. And then if we have anything that's in dire need of help, we send it down to the Mac lab for um, conservation and preservation.
Mhm. Yeah.
We've had a bunch of questions about AI. I don't know if that's something that anybody wants to mention. That's probably the last question that we have time for tonight.
I've talked with a number of first Lego teams, and everybody has asked me about AI. Doing archaeology, you can't really use AI. You have to be the one to do the actual work. I know there was a question about robots digging. Um, because it's such a destructive science and you have to be so careful digging stratigraphically, minus the paleo digger, which is great because that is for a specific reason.
Mhm.
You can't really use AI to dig a site. You can't use AI to analyze correctly. AI, things like Google Images, I use all the time. If I don't know what an object is, I take a picture of it and it sometimes it tells me what it is, sometimes it tells me it's a Viking sword. Um, so you have to really be careful with AI.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we do use predictive modeling sometimes where we'll say there are favorable circumstances that say that there's probably a site here. So, that it's near fresh water, it's well-drained soil, maybe there hasn't been any development there, or there's a map that once had a building there. So in that way, maybe there's an AI eventually down the road that can take all those sources and kind of say and predict that, but it would still need to be checked by human beings for sure. And, an AI could write my report, that would be great. But again, it's a lot of stuff that humans just have to do themselves.
One area where I can see AI being very helpful is with interpretation and creating like when we are finished with the site, we want to make that information accessible to the
Yes.
public. So creating things like digital story maps, um, doing 3D renditions of a structure that was once there, could be really beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. Even just, asking AI to make it more understandable to a specific level, because I know a lot of archaeologists that can't talk to kids or adults. We speak our own language, and sometimes that gets away from us. I know I do it all the time. I talk in slang and, very archaeology specific terms, and I have to catch myself. So that would definitely be a useful way for AI to help us get that, because getting the information out to the public is probably the most important part of archaeology, because if you don't do that, it's not really good archaeology.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Thank you so much, guys. This was amazing. I hope everybody learned a lot. You guys
Can
were
I
asked,
answer? Oh, can I
yes,
answer one more question that I
go
just saw
ahead.
that's actually kind of important? What happens when someone finds an artifact in their property? Is there a law that makes them let archaeologists use it? Private property, there are no laws, unfortunately. In Howard County, there are no county protections, except for in historic districts. We have Ellicott City, which is a historic district, and Lawyers Hill. And then we also have the state park. But if somebody finds something on their property, no, they don't have to let us on the property unless if they want to. So it's important to understand the laws behind doing archaeology if you're learning about archaeology. So that was a very good question.
Mhm.
Yeah, you guys asked some absolutely amazing questions, both on the form when you guys signed up and in the chat. You guys are really asking some fantastic questions. I hope we are going to see a lot of you at some of the events, that you'll maybe go to Jefferson Patterson Park for a field trip, or just with your family to explore the museum there, that you'll join the Archaeological Society of Maryland and come out to a public dig, that you'll look for archaeology events at the local parks in your community. But mostly, we hope that you will leave here tonight with more of an appreciation for why archaeology is so important and how it can help us.
I put in the chat box my email address because I always welcome first Lego Leaguers. I have public dig days often. And if you guys are near Howard County, come out to our sites and you can actually participate in doing archaeology. I'd love to have you out.
I'm attempting to add mine in too, but it keeps wanting to give a direct message, so
Yeah,
I'll put it
yeah.
in the. I have to figure this out, but you can also Google me, Stephanie Soder for MHT. It's just stephanie.soder@maryland.gov. Um, And I'm happy to also, talk to anybody as well. We do have a lot. We are getting inundated with requests. So please, please, please give us your patience and time, and, we'll try to get back to you. I did find really quickly at least a kind of link. I accidentally, again, sent that direct. So this one is specific to the Frozen Charlotte doll, that I tried to show up, but it was showing up blurred. But that's part of the VCU Archaeology Lab. So if you guys want to check that out, it's super cool.
Thank you so much, everybody. We hope you have a great night, and thank you to our wonderful archaeologists for answering your questions and for being here. Angie or Sarah, did you want to add anything else?
Thank you. This is amazing.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh yeah, I
And
just want to say real quick that I'm impressed with all of you students who chose to take on this challenge. And for those of you who I've met and worked with, I'm very impressed with all your ideas, and I'm excited to see the end results and what you guys come up with.
Yeah.
thank you, thank you. Hope you have a great night. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us on email. We will happily answer your questions however we can.